ก็เซสชันนี้เป็นภาษาอังกฤษนะครับก็ขอดำเนินรายการเป็นภาษาอังกฤษนะครับตามโปรแกรมนะครับก็ First of all, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back after lunch. Very nice lunch indeed. And I hope you enjoy our session this morning as well, because we had such a wonderful discussion and very stimulating conversation. Basically, from what I've learned this morning, it's Thai and U.S. relation has been there for a long time, 190 years now of the diplomatic relations, and there are some internal politics both within the U.S. as well as in Thailand that we have to, thought through and try to work out in order to promote the relations between our two countries. Also some challenges with the geopolitics as well, and also there we have learned that the relations in the past, there are some challenges between our two countries that we have to go through if we want to take on forward our relations in the next 10 years or forever, as we said in the morning, that Thai-U.S. relations have to go on forever. So in this session, it's a pleasure for me to introduce our three panelists, our distinguished panelist speakers on possibilities and the future of Thai-U.S. relations. The first one, our speaker, probably needs no introductions, Ambassador Ralph Boyce, or as we know, the Skip. He served as the Thai, okay, please give us hands. Ambassador Boyce has been here in Thailand several times, if I remember, as a junior diplomat, as well as the U.S. ambassador in Thailand from 2005 to 2007. After that, he joined the Boeing International, and he was president of Boeing Southeast Asia from February 2008 until October 2021. After Boeing, he's came back here in Thailand to live in Thailand, and he's now also the trustee of the Keenan Foundation Asia. Please give a warm welcome to Ambassador Ralph Boyce once more. The next speaker is Mr. John Evans. He's a co-founding partner of and the managing director of Tectus. It's an Asia-based advisory from a firm providing both public and private sector trade and investment assistance. And taking from the inception of the company, now he has more than 60 persons in the firm that has given advice to multinational companies in the region and around the world. He's also an AMCHAM board of governor and a vice president in Thailand. He is also chairperson of the nonprofit Prince in Asia, which offers fellowships for postgraduates from the US to come and learn about Asian experience as well as cultural exchange. So please give a warm welcome to our second speaker, Mr. John Evans. And the third speaker, Mr. Paul Wesley Chambers. He's a lecturer and advisor for International Affairs, Center of ASEAN Community Studies, Faculty of Social Science of Naresuan University. He also research fellows of many institutes, including Cambodian Institute of Cooperation and Peace, and Institute of Research and Advanced Studies. He also executive committee member of Asian Political and International Study Association, also executive editor of Asian Affairs and American Review. He also writes a lot of publications and articles, which I have like 3 pages of it. So without further ado, let's get on with this session. So, welcome. Yes, of course. Welcome, Paul, as well. All right. Okay, Ambassador Boyce, as we move on to the possibility and the future of Thai-U.S. relationships in this second panel, as we know that from the Treaty of Amity and Commerce in 1833, the relation between Thailand and U.S. will never end. It will go on forever, okay? And from your perspective, how this going to happen? So,
okay,
yeah.
Good Paul. Well, hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. I see many old friends have been able to get together with this morning. First thing that has to be said, talking about Washington, in the terms of the bilateral relationship, I'm not sure how much bandwidth these days Thailand has in Washington, given Ukraine and given what's going on in Gaza and the West Bank. So that's just a fact of the matter. People are preoccupied, and I think it's probably understandably so. But even having said that, anybody who listened to everything people said this morning has to come away, regardless of Ukraine or Gaza, looking at the U.S.-Thai relationship relative to the way it had been since the end of the Second World War, as of late being in a state of decline. Maybe that's putting too strong a word on it, but what I thought I would do is not talk about 190 years or the Treaty of Amity, but start at the end of the Second World War, which is where the real U.S.-Thai special relationship has its roots. And so what I want to do today is chart how we got here first before we talk about where we're maybe going. And I would call it the rise and decline of the special relationship in 4 acts, okay? Act 1 is going to be the post-World War II period leading up to the beginning of the Vietnam War. Vietnam War period is going to be what President Johnson called the apogee of the relationship, the second act, what we did during the second act together. Act 3 is going to be the interval between the end of the Vietnam, or the end of the war in Vietnam in April 1975 and the invasion of Cambodia in December 1978. So the Cambodia period is going to be Act 3, and Act 4 is going to be now what? Okay, after Cambodia, there was a drift. We'll get to this in a second. But then a couple of things happened that really pointed to the relationship having been fundamentally different than it used to be. And the first act I'm going to open with, post-World War II period, is that wasn't normal. A lot of Americans grew up, of my age and a little older perhaps, thinking that post-World War II Asia was normal, with only one country, with only one superpower, because everybody else was either defeated or preoccupied. Think about it. Our allies, the UK and the USSR, remember them, the USSR? Were both recovering from the terrible, beating they took in being victorious. We didn't have that kind of an issue. China was internally preoccupied with their own revolution. Japan, as I mentioned, a defeated power. Europe busy decolonizing, not necessarily willingly, but that's what they were doing. And this was decolonizing from a devastated continent of Europe. India, seeking independence, basically. And a Cold War looming to anybody who had eyes, basically. And so during the war itself, it was mentioned, I think John Wee Watt mentioned that who's going to win, that kind of conversation was going on, starting with the Battle of Midway. Pretty clear to most observers that we won that, and the rest of the war was how that post-Midway period was going to go. And the US and the UK saw very early on the possibilities for working with Thai students that were studying in the US and the UK, and started in 2 instances, similar but different groups called the Seri Thai or Free Thai, who were trained by the US and the UK with the notion of coming back into Thailand and unstabilizing or destabilizing what was in fact a Japanese occupation. I mean, it was also mentioned this morning that technically Thailand was allied with Japan, because there was a moment before the Battle of Midway, I guess, where they thought maybe these guys were going to win. But it was an occupation, really, by the Japanese. And so the US and UK were working with Saritai to help overthrow that. And so part of that initial relationship reflected the fact that Thailand was not really an ally of Japan. And part of it was just our cold-eyed calculation that in the post-war period, we're going to need friends in Southeast Asia. And of course, our allies, the Brits, wanted to take reparations out of Thailand because they were a defeated power and former ally of Japan. And a little known footnote these days to history is the US intervened with the British and made that go away. And a whole generation of school children in Thailand after the Second World War were taught in school that the US was this special friend who kept Thailand from being humiliated by Pudikao. Okay, by the Brits. So there was a steady increase in the US presence in a variety of areas. There was USAID economic assistance, there were Peace Corps, there was important US investments, there was a huge push for education. And it really didn't reflect what we're going to get into here with Act 2, which is the military side. I mean, we had a presence in Thailand militarily. We were stationing planes and airmen in various Thai bases, but after 1965, when the U.S. really got engaged in Vietnam, that presence in those bases just skyrocketed. And with the willing support of our Thai allies, which is, if you think about it, Thailand, on everybody's list of a potential domino, is allowing the United States to essentially use Thai soil to launch bombing raids in Indochina. Amazing in retrospect, but that's what happened. There was a legal underpinning, the 1962 CETO, or 1954 Manila Pact, the CETO Treaty. But then also in 1962, Tanat Koman, then foreign minister, signed an agreement with Dean Rusk, which solidified the bilateral military part of the special relationship. So there were already facts on the ground, meaning that there were these bases, but suddenly there were 50,000 Americans at them between 65 and 75. And the end of Act 2 came with a lot of sudden finality, really, unexpected by some people perhaps, in April 1975, with the North Vietnamese victory in Vietnam, basically. And the fall of Laos and Cambodia had also occurred at this point. And the domino theory seemed to be coming true. So when the U.S. in this immediate post-April period in 1975, there was an American naval vessel that was seized by the Vietnamese called the Mayaguez. And we, in our wisdom, launched an attack to get the boat back from Thai bases without notifying the Thai, which didn't go over very well. Indeed, after the Mayaguez crisis, we were basically asked, or really told, get out, which we were doing anyway. So pretty ignominious portion of our special relationship there in April 1975. And there was a bit of drift for a while. None of us on any side of the equation knew what to do with the U.S.-Thai relationship at that point. We were sort of in a state of emotion. I am motion, no motion, just as is. And then in December 1978, as I mentioned, the Vietnamese invaded Cambodia for a whole variety of reasons that we're not going to get into here at this conference. And there was an immediate ASEAN-led response to the vision of a military crossing a border and occupying another country in Southeast Asia, which is what the Vietnamese did in Cambodia. So there was an ASEAN-led response to what happened in Cambodia, immediately supported by the Chinese, who were the supporters of one of the overthrown Khmer factions, the Khmer Rouge. And the US realized that here's an opportunity for us to get re-engaged in a positive way in Southeast Asia without us telling everybody else what to do. There was already an ASEAN-led plan to get the Vietnamese out of Cambodia and restore Cambodian independence. And so what the US did was we supported the ASEAN-led plan. And we were one of a number of powers that was involved in the Cambodia peace process. And what I would say to you today is the fact that by that time there were a number of important external powers operating on the scene. A lot of the people that weren't there at the end of World War II were back on the scene, including the Chinese, but including many others as well. That's normal. That's what's normal in this part of the world. And the abnormal thing was 1945 to about 1985 or so, which was the U.S. was the big dog. That wasn't normal. And as I said, a whole generation of American policymakers grew up thinking that was normal. And many are still recovering from that fact, that we have to share this ever-expanding pie in Southeast Asia. Anyway, I'm almost done. The Paris Peace Agreement, which was a multinational operation, happened in October 1991, and was immediately followed, no connection really, but it was immediately followed by the collapse of the Soviet Union. Remember that? That was in December of the same year. So once again, the U.S. was in a position of asking itself, where do we go from here in this relationship? And what I would suggest is, at that point, roughly when I began my time serving in Thailand, I observed, and others too, that it was a giant relationship with a ton of agencies and people operating, not just military, but across the board, and yet the raison d'etre, the reason for the relationship being, wasn't really there anymore. Meaning getting the Vietnamese out of Cambodia or getting the Vietnamese out of South Vietnam even. Those were not issues anymore. And yet there was this huge American presence. It's been commented to the size of the embassy here. It's this, after I guess Iraq still, and then Egypt. This is the biggest embassy, the biggest US embassy in the world. And there's a reason for that. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is it just grew over the years, bureaucratically. I mean, it became an easy place to station people, whatever agency or department you were from. And the second part of the equation is, and what was and is, the Thai government were okay with that. They were comfortable. I mean, duty-free, diplomatic list. You know, if you look at the diplomatic list, the US part of the overall diplomatic list is by far the largest. It's 19 pages long last time I looked. Most embassies, most of the other big embassies are maybe 4 or 5, including China and the UK and others. 4 or 5 pages of actual diplomats on the list. So the US has still got the gigantic presence, and yet the comfort level is still there, I would say, on both sides, but still you get this issue of, is Thailand tilting toward China after all these years of being our special friend? And you heard this from several Thai speakers. Thailand doesn't tilt, they balance. They balance, they know how to balance. They've gotten away with it since the beginning of Siam in the old days. They always balanced whatever was necessary to preserve Thailand's integrity territorially, to preserve Thailand's interests politically and economically, and they're doing that now. They're doing that now, and anytime the balance gets out of whack, they'll fix it by themselves. They certainly don't need Uncle Sam to point it out in an unclassified report or in congressional hearings constantly, that Thailand is in China's pocket or things like that. These are silly things to say. I come back again to my point. This situation is normal. It's a normal situation. We're a normal, major, important partner of Thailand, but one of many. That's normal. And where we go from here, I mean, I don't see this embassy getting any smaller, frankly, but I think as various Thai governments to come are going to ask hard questions like, is this really necessary? Do we really want to be the host to every single US agency that exists in the US government? Because about half of the people in the US Embassy in Bangkok are here for the regional or even global responsibilities because it's a good location and a friendly host government. And about half, and the number continues to decrease, are here devoted solely to the bilateral relationship. So it's a normal question for Thai governments to ask, is this really in our interest? Or maybe not, maybe we should trim the sails a little bit. That question hasn't been answered. That's what's going to be over the next 10 years. That's going to be the central question in US-Thai relations over the next 10 years is how to calibrate it. We know what it is, we know what it was, we're not sure what it's going to be. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ambassador. It's very important to set the scene. We have to know where we were in the past to know where we will be going in the future. So all your 4 acts, kind of describe to us how the relations between the U.S. and Thailand has been over the years. There's some up and downs and some different reasons why your presence are here, and also the size of the U.S. embassy, is kind of testament to the fact that Thailand is an important hub, I think, for U.S. embassy, and as well as we can see it as a regional location. So it's something that if you think about resizing in the future, but I hope that doesn't affect the relations between U.S. and Thailand. I hope it gets stronger and stronger. Okay. So well, with the next speaker, our AMCHAM Vice President, I think in October, our Prime Minister ASAT has been to the AMCHAM General Meeting in Bangkok, and I think part of his speech is said that trade flies on flag. That is kind of basis between Thai and U.S. relations. So from the economic perspective and trade perspective from AMCHAM, so please take it away. I'll give you the floor. What's your opinion? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to start from an AMCHAM perspective, and I'm going to give just a tiny bit of history, not as much as Ambassador Boyce gave, but I do want to recognize a very old friend that's here in the audience that I'm thinking everybody here knows, but David Lyman is here, and David's father founded the AMCHAM. David, you want to give us all a wave? And I'm not as good as remembering all the history, but I know that David has been president of our AMCHAM several times, and he continues in a role as an advisor to the board of which I sit on, and provides us historical context and a sound grounding as we look at how to position AMCHAM for the future relationships of the U.S. and Thailand. So I'll take off there and say, what is AMCHAM looking at, and what are we doing? And so, one of the things is the current president is the managing director of the Bank of America, Kun Mook, but she's also the first Thai woman that has been president of the chamber. And with her taking on that role, at the same time that AMCHAM decided it needed to be more involved in advocacy with many different departments and ministries of the government, it has provided us a key insight and a key entree into many of those departments that, quite frankly, a American president wouldn't have. And so that has positioned us really well as this new government has come into place. Prime Minister Srettha was his first public announcement was to the American Chamber of Commerce. And when he presented to us, he focused on what you would expect, okay? He focused on talking about trade and investment between the two nations. He also positioned some things that I think go to show Skip's point that there's not and the point that was made earlier about a choosing of sides. There's no sides between the U.S. and China, and Skip's point that there's only one. We're only one of a number of countries. And so during the Prime Minister's talk, he highlighted to the American community the Japanese, and how the Japanese had been the largest and longest investment partners. And highlighted that in the automotive industry, which some of the audience found a little bit strange. At the same time, the topic that he was talking about on the automotive side was how to create Thailand as a hub, not only for continued itself as a hub, not only for the automotive industry that it has now, but how to move into the electrical vehicles with a bit of fervor and a bit of focus. At the same time, he contradicted himself and told us that the Japanese didn't like all the incentives that were going into EV because of the number of combustion engines that they make here, and that we should be prepared to apply for our Board of Investment applications before the end of the year. So there were a lot of positive messages, but I'm focusing on one that was confusing. And I think that confusion is something that continues to happen from the American business community. And one of the things that the Prime Minister Srettha just did is he headed to the US for APEC. And he provided some very good insights into how Thailand is going to focus on its trade and investment. And then I think it was just yesterday, there was a ministerial discussion here with the diplomats of the Thai government, and he said that he was going to promote proactive foreign diplomacy, focusing on trade, investment, tourism, and soft power, and he expected his envoys to be customer-centric, which is a very interesting word, okay? And when he went to the US, one of the things he did really, really well was that he positioned with a number of foreign companies that are looking at the region, that Thailand is open for business, it's willing to discuss Thailand as an investment destination, that there's been new leadership put in both the Board of Investment and the EEC, and that there will be new policies and both investment promotions and incentives coming out in January. And he sort of whet the appetite for the American investment community. Now, my day job, when I'm not doing AMCHAM board stuff, is to advise companies for the past 25 years on choosing their investment locations. My firm has 13 offices across the region, and we've been instrumental in assisting many large US multinationals to make investments here. Why I'm telling you this is that those investors have not necessarily been focused on Thailand like they have in the past. You don't have to go back very far, okay? 7 to 10 years, Thailand was still the location that most US multinationals thought we should first evaluate because it's easy, and it is easy. That's one of the best selling points. Thailand is a great place to do business. And when you put all the factors together, it ranks very highly. But are we competitive there? Is the support network there? Is the political climate conducive to our investment? And so what has happened is that while Thailand was sort of the darling of the US investor, now it is, just to Ambassador Skip's point, it's just one of the locations. It's just one of the players, okay? So when the US companies are looking at trade and investment, they're evaluating Thailand with a much more critical eye. And that brings me back to sort of what does Thailand need to do, okay? It does need to announce these new policies. It needs to stick with the policies when it announces them. It needs to do a little better job at coming up with some of the policies, and I'll give you an example. One of the policies over the past 20 years, in one way, shape, or form, has been, we want your regional headquarters here, okay? And it's had several different names as promotions from the Thai government. None of those have been very attractive to the other possible destinations for your regional headquarters. Because of banking restrictions, because of the Foreign Business Act. And again, we're launching, Thailand, we are launching a new headquarters business portal. I can tell you, it's still not that attractive. So one of the things is, if Thailand really wants headquarters to come here, okay, and it's a great time. I mean, Ambassador Boyce was in Singapore for a long time. So many of the headquarters have moved from Hong Kong to Singapore. It's extremely costly. It's not necessarily the most efficient place to be. Thailand could take some of that investment, but it's not positioned well to do so for a number of other reasons. And then when it's looking at its policies, and we were working for a company in the EV space, okay, this past year. They produced raw materials and processed those for electric batteries. So from my perspective, Thailand was a fantastic first choice because of the policies to promote EV. Approaching the government here, the answer was, oh, this is a material, it's not EV. So therefore, it doesn't qualify for those incentives. And our response was, well, okay, we understand that. This is a $1.4 billion investment that will be all of the raw materials of those targets that you want to come from the US and elsewhere to do those EV projects. That was lost at that point. That wasn't understood. Now, I'm hopeful that the new government will be listening to that. It wasn't that the old government wasn't listening. I don't think they understood it. Okay, so to sum up what I was saying, I think we're in a very critical and crucial time to promote Thai-U.S. business. The AMCHAM is hoping that at the end of next year, or the beginning of 2025, that we will host an economic forum on U.S.-Thai trade and investment, and that it will focus in the sectors in the S-curve that Thailand is targeting. And we're looking very much forward to helping support the growth of this economy and maintaining that strong commercial and economic relationship. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Evans. So that was very candid, and I thank you for sharing your view with us. And it's I can't speak on behalf of the government at the moment, but I'm sure that we will try to do our best to make sure Thailand is attractive once again. And hopefully we can continue our investment and business with American investors. So yeah, I'm sure maybe later on some questions from the floor would be direct to you, just to get some more answer or some advice on these issues. But for now, may I move on to Mr. Paul Chambers. Mr. Chambers, you have written about ASEAN and probably the way how Thailand should play its role in ASEAN and with relations with the U.S. And as Ambassador Godek said this morning, that Thailand is critical in this region. So maybe some comments on that, and how can we stay critical in this region, and what's your view for the next 10 years for us? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I start, I just want to thank Ambassador Pradap Pibun Songkram and the members of the John F. Kennedy Foundation for having me here. And I will start just a little historically as well, if you don't mind. First of all, I think that Thai-U.S. relations have been a function of the changing equilibrium over time, and as well as liberal considerations. Once upon a time, Thailand and the United States had one of the closest defensive and economic relationships. And determined by a post-1947 Cold War balance of power, anti-communist ideology, free market partnership, and assistance programs such as the Peace Corps. This linkage remained generally firm until the end of the Cold War. But Thailand's 1992 to 2006 elected governments adopted a more omnidirectional foreign policy, more of a hedging foreign policy, which has been more commonplace among Thai governments, actually. Okay, but after 9/11, counterterror helped Thailand and the U.S. find new common ground. Thailand sent troops to Afghanistan and Iraq, while the United States invited Thailand to become a major non-NATO ally. But the post-Cold War world saw American policymakers give more priority to democracy and human rights, considerations which led Washington to strongly oppose Thailand's 2006 and 2014 coups. However, the rise of China, specifically after 2013 when Xi Jinping took power, reverberated across Thai-U.S. relations. Now more than ever, as one senior U.S. diplomat told me, Washington was doing a tightrope dance because Washington needed to balance geopolitical interests with democratic norms, something kind of hard to do, okay? But the rise of China then could cause some difficulties for the United States in terms of relations with Thailand, some differences. Now, after Washington's sanctioning of Bangkok due to Thailand's 2014 coup, Thailand increasingly turned to China for military aid, joint military exercises, and military education for Thai soldiers. There was sort of a tilting toward China right after the 2014 coup. And as such, at the same time, the United States was a little bit distant toward Thailand because of that coup. And the Obama administration in particular sought to distance itself from Prayut Chan-o-cha. Of course, we know that when Trump became president, he backed away from that policy, and Prayut was invited to the Oval Office. A lot of Trump's policy was interesting because you can see a sort of re-engagement with Thailand based upon military sales. Okay, so example, the Stryker, U.S. Stryker military equipment replaced the Chinese VH-1. When Joe Biden succeeded Trump in 2021, he maintained Trump's policy of getting closer to the administration of Prayut. Okay. But why was this happening? Because the United States saw the new security considerations, the new kind of a Cold War in Southeast Asia and the world that was occurring between the United States and China. Okay. And so actually, over the last few years, there has begun the the strategic dialogue and the defense strategic dialogues, which has given way to the Thailand-U.S. strategic and defense dialogue. That's a lot. And so all of these dialogues have been important to galvanize U.S. security relations. I'm concentrating on this because John just talked about the economic relationships. Okay. In 2022, U.S.-Thai relations further improved when Bangkok signed on to the U.S.-led Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, IPEF, which has really improved economic relations between Thailand and the United States. Over this last summer, there have been more and more negotiations with regard to the IPEF. Also, in 2022, Bangkok and Washington signed the U.S.-Thailand Communique on Strategic Alliance and Partnership, which is very important over 18 different issue areas, including economics and security, but also the environment, but also energy, other areas, health, for example. Okay. The coming to office of Seta Tawisin might produce a change for even better U.S.-Thai relations. Both sides want something. The United States, a rejuvenated relationship with a more democratic Thailand in the face of a rising China. I mean, as Ambassador Kodak put it today, this is a real opportunity for Thailand and the United States. This is the first government really in 20 years where the United States has a chance to reset relations. Okay, and for SETA, more U.S. trade and investment can improve Thailand's economy, as well as have a better security relationship with Washington. Thus, one of SETA's first moves was a visit to the United States, which included Thailand's Armed Forces commander. SETA's unofficial meeting with U.S. President Biden led to what appeared to be a Thai-U.S. rapprochement in terms of greater trade, investment, and security, as well as other areas of cooperation. A meeting bolstered by the more recent meeting in San Francisco and SETA's invitation to Biden to visit Thailand. So now, that being said, we need to understand that SETA has already met with Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin. So this is not saying that SETA is suddenly aligning with the United States, but rather that there is an ongoing hedging and a recalibration of the idea of creating balance among all sides. This is Thailand's policy, okay? But the United States can and should try to work harder with regard to this communique on strategic alliance and partnership. Because for the future, it needs to be more than simply a talk shop, right? We need to build more than a toothless talk shop. And because if all of the planks of that communique can become more substantial, then the dialogue can become more substance. And that's why we have to remember all of the stakeholders that are involved in U.S.-Thai relations right now. It's not just state to state, right? There's business. There's civil society. Post-COVID health considerations, energy, okay, and more. Right this year, there has been created the United States-Thailand Caucus in the U.S. Congress to try to boost relations, to try to build a better commitment to opportunity between our two countries. And so I think this is a grand opportunity. And as these series of dialogues continue, the strategic dialogues, the economic business dialogues, the more they are enhanced, this is probably the way of the future. And I'm sorry, just to mention ASEAN, because you did tell me to talk about that. Just to say, I commend the Biden administration for really making an effort at multilateralism on the footstep and the end of Trump, hopefully, with regard to United States support for ACMEX, okay, the United States support for the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific, ASEAN-U.S. cooperation, Mekong-U.S. cooperation. All of these efforts are important to enhance U.S.-Thai relations. And anything else, Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chamber. So it's very interesting talk, and you know, you just remind us that, you know, our relations now is not just state and state, but of course there are many other factors and other actors involved as well to take this relationship forward in the future. And also commenting on our role, and you know, it's glad to hear that the United States would play more roles in the multilateral multilateralism now, and especially in supporting ASEAN and our sub-regional collaborations here, and also in the way to take forward like IPEF and Indo-Pacific as well. Yeah, I think we have gone through political, economic, as well as some other regional issues from the aspect of Thai-U.S. relationships. Of course, everyone will share the views that, you know, there is some room for advancement in our relationships, but of course there are some other stuff, some other challenges that we have to make sure that we have to go through and improve ourselves in order to take our relationship forward as well. So I think at this time, maybe some of our audience would like to ask you some question, and you know, as we only have half an hour left, so maybe we'll start with you first, sir. Maybe identify yourself and before you ask a question. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Fred Schwerchek, and I'm from Thomas Business School, Global Executive MBA program. One of the things I think I'm missing in terms of Thai-American relationships is people to people. This has been government to government or government to business. And the issue then is essentially communication related to the development of friendship, which requires mutual understanding. I don't see much American influence anymore. I'll give two examples. One comes from the embassy, looking at what they've done in terms of community development or other people-to-people activities. And I saw one event from Chiang Mai, giving equipment, medical equipment and educational equipment. Very good, but what else? The other example is from the Chamber. The Chamber has recently done CSR and gave 91 awards. But what about the impact of those 91? There's not much detail about those. Those are all examples in terms of soft power and influence that I do not see taking place and should be taking place. A little bit of history, 2014, Thai appreciation for the United States was 73%. I don't know what it is now. 2018, Asian Foundation did a study of Thai youth. And the majority of Thai youth did not trust America. All right. These are all examples of not really stimulating the influence, the ideals that Dr. Tanat was really committed to in terms of the JFK Foundation, or even what John F. Kennedy was in terms of ideals. So what can we do more related people to people in terms of Thai-American friendship? Thank you.
Does that go to any particular speakers or any one of them? Yeah? Okay, sure, please, Mr. Evans.
So thank you for that question. It was very much needed. And so first I will talk just from an American Chamber perspective. I agree with you that there have not been as many cross-cultural events with the embassy or with the Chamber. Part of that was due to the COVID interruption. For example, the U.S. Independence Day picnic was canceled. Those types of initiatives are now being reviewed by the board, and we're looking at relaunching that picnic as well as some cross-cultural events. There was recently, in celebration of the 190 years of relationship through the Treaty of Amity, there was Embassy, Bangkok Governor, and AMCHAM supported tree planting. Both at the embassy grounds and then at a public park here in Bangkok. So there are some of those initiatives going. The scholarship fund, I would be happy to provide anyone with details on that. The foundation, the Chamber's Foundation, the ATF, that has sponsored more than 3,000 students for 4-year degrees. So these are Thai students from marginalized communities that need the financial support and have been sponsored by the generosity of the AMCHAM members to finish their 4-year degrees. Just this past year, that program was evolved, and we looked at what were some of the big needs here, and of course, knowledge workers and technical skills is a need of the Thai economy to support its move into the value-added manufacturing and the S-curve that it's targeting. So the Chamber started a scholarship fund for technical school grads. This is our first year. We're launching it now, and we see that as a vehicle to help provide these scholarships and then workers for those member companies that are helping to sponsor it. So that's from a Chamber perspective on things. I'd like to add something else. I know, Doris, if you have a cohort of Fulbright here, I know there's at least one if not many Peace Corps persons here. There have been a number of internships from U.S. universities that were interrupted by COVID and are being relaunched. USC would be one of them. Indiana's another. And then I'm going to put on my hat. I'm the chairperson of Princeton in Asia. Princeton in Asia is a 125-year-old organization that organizes immersive experience fellowships across Asia for postgraduates from universities in the U.S. It's specifically focused on Asia-U.S. cross-cultural communications and education. One of our next speakers, Josh Morris, here in the front, was a participant and alumni in Princeton in Asia, as I am, that's what brought me to Thailand. We will be celebrating our 50th anniversary of having fellows in Thailand. We are now rebuilding that organization. When COVID interrupted us, we had just under 150 fellows across 22 countries in Asia. We're now back up to 45. And if anyone wants to learn more about this is a great example of U.S., in this case Thai, because we have a number of fellowships here, cross-cultural immersion, and the exact thing I think that we should be focusing from a soft power position. Thank you.
I also applaud the question. Thank you for asking it and adding to the agenda here. I have an anecdotal response. In the 90s, when I was posted here, I went to an event at AUAA, American University Alumni Association, and I didn't realize what the theme was at the time, but apparently everybody was told to come and be able to recount their favorite, memory from studying in the U.S. And there were hundreds of people there, and one after another get up on stage and did very, very well done, practiced, obviously very emotional and wonderful recollections of their time in the U.S. And it occurred to me as the evening went on that none of them had been selected by the U.S. government or any U.S. foundations. They were all self-selected. They all decided to go study in the U.S. back in the, in the 50s and 60s. And that was one thing that had occurred to me. That, we had no real control over who went. They went there because they wanted to, and they decided on their own. I thought maybe this could be a little better organized. We could get more, even better participation. The second thing I noticed was that I was the only one from the U.S. Embassy at this particular dinner. There was some kind of a link between AUAA and the embassy that was lacking at that time. I have no idea what the current situation is, but the second anecdote I have is when I went to Indonesia in 1998, the U.S. government was, searching for ways to go into the post-Suharto period and enhance the relationship with Indonesia. And, we had to design essentially from the ground up a bilateral economic assistance program because Indonesia had been graduated from AID, much like Thailand was in the 90s, around the same time. And my thought was, I knew there was a number floating out there in the billions that we were supposed to put a program together, a whole bunch of programs together for Indonesia. And I thought, let's put them all in scholarships. It's be a lot easier to manage. Let's just have a real good, rigorous selection process and send hundreds and thousands of Indonesians to the U.S. to study and replicate that experience that those Thais, who all were self-selected, had in the previous generation. Naturally, that was a dream that didn't get realized, but it was my initial response was education is the gift that keeps on giving. A 4-year stint in the U.S. or a postgraduate or whatever, that's there. It's there. That's an investment that's been made for a lifetime. So thank you.
If I could add to that, I think education certainly, yes, is the gift that keeps on giving. Let me give you the example from my own university. Naresuan University is a provincial university. Students at Naresuan University rarely have a chance to really move out to the international world. But thanks to the Thai United States Educational Foundation, my university received a Fulbright researcher who did his research, but while he was at my university, he taught all of us about his expertise in Model United Nations. Model United Nations in which our students could simulate the United Nations. And these are poor students, and they did so well that they were accepted in an international conference in Japan. And they were able to go there. Students who never would have had the chance to do that. And so I think this is a great example of people-to-people education then. It's really the way to go if we want to go that people-to-people.
Thank you. Yes, I saw you, ma'am, just one gentleman before you because he has the microphone already. I'll give the question to you afterwards, okay? Can I give to Natashat first? He has the microphone already.
Okay.
So the next question will be yours. Okay, ma'am.
Okay, so I would start. Thank you very much. And I'm Naresuan Chintakanon, and I'm Executive Director of International Affairs at the National Broadcasting and Telecommunication Commission. And for the information, I'm also son of Dr. Anusha Chintakanon here. And so that makes me the descendant of the member of the Free Thai movement. I have a question about my work, but I would like to pick on the previous question first, because I'm also the father of 15-year-old boy studying in international school here in Bangkok. And I would say the opportunity is there when you talk about youth and people-to-people relationship, because my son studied at the British school, Wellington College, Bangkok. But I would say that many of the teenagers these days, they are Americanized, and they dream about going to the America for university or master degree, because study in the British system, they are very structured, uniforms, rules and regulations and everything. But I think that the obstacles or the fear is on the parent side, because what we are maybe worried about now is the Asian hate movement. So my first question would be, what direction would you think? And because as a parents, we can't help but worrying if our kids are there in the US and the Asian hate movement is very strong, and it happens to people on the street, which for the organization, for the government, yes, we have a good relationship, but when you walk on the street, you can't control it. So perhaps that will be my first question about the direction. How do you think we can solve it, or would it get better? The second question would be about my work, and Dr. Paul Chambers mentioned about IPEF. So my question would be, we see the US election coming, and what if the result of the election is that the Republican getting the office again? Because we saw in the past that when Donald Trump took the presidential, and then TPP was killed, and would it be happening again to IPEF? So we can plan about our work, about the direction that IPEF would go. So if you can help commenting on that, and thank you very much.
I'm sorry, with regard to Donald Trump, you mentioned what subject, or just the... killing IPEF. Do we think he would kill IPEF, I'm sorry, yeah. I think that, yeah, I really hope Trump is not elected, so now you know how I think. But I think that the inertia of US-Thai relations will continue beyond this man named Trump. And if he gets 4 years, that's 4 years, okay? So I have to give you the worst case scenarios, right? But regardless of what he tries to do, like the TPP, he disengaged the United States. With regard to IPEF, yeah, the inertia is against him anyway. He might be able to try to disengage for a little bit, but what comes after him will re-engage. And then he's out anyway, because you only get 2 terms. But I think that, well, I'm not going to think about the 2024 election. Anyway, that's my 2 cents worth.
I'll address the Asia hate question. I too have a young daughter who's 16, not a son, in an international school here, and her entire life has been focused on going to school in the United States for her university days. And the issue of Asian hate has now come up, of course, at her school with the incidents in the U.S. And she turned to me and she said, "Dad, is it safe?" And it's a very good and serious question, and unfortunately, there's no clear answer. You asked a question on a political economic issue on IPEF. Unfortunately, we've lost in the U.S. We've lost a lot of civility, and while this wasn't caused by Donald Trump, he certainly exacerbated it while he was in office. And so the issues of bias and racism and whether it's on race or religion or gender, are very real. Now, what on the good side of that is that the number of incidences are actually very, very small. And it is because of them, that they get quickly picked up by the media and they get pushed left or right depending on how it can be politically used. So I think it's a very serious consideration of when you're looking at putting your child in school. I just did 2 tours of universities in the U.S. and I was at one university with my daughter and we were walking along during the tour and I thought, what a fabulous place. It has everything she wants. And she turned to me, she said, Dad, I can't go here. And I said, honey, why? And she said, look around. She said, there are no Asians. She said, there's no diversity. And I said, oh, got it. Okay, understood. So I think a lot of it goes back to how you're going to choose those schools. Big city, small city, college town, big school, small school, the environment, where it is, its reputation. I mean, I can give an example of 2 liberal arts schools that we visited in my home state of Minnesota. McAllister, very highly ranked school, extremely liberal, a very good place for diversity. Another one, which is almost as equally good, St. John's, a very conservative school. It's a difference. So my answer would be you need to spend time with your son looking at the environment in the school and figuring that out.
Thank you very much. So can I give the microphone to the lady at the back, please? Thank you. Please, ma'am.
Good afternoon. My name is Rosemarie Wanchupela. I'm the director of Rosemarie Academy in Bakret, Nonthaburi. I'm also the representative of ITEP, International Test of English Proficiency, ITEP. It's so nice to be invited here today, and I want to share, but I'd like to stand where I can see everybody. So can I come, where can I come to? Where I can? May I come up front? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Being an English teacher, we've been taught we have to speak to our audience. So here I am, bigger than life. Hi. Yeah, I came to, let me start by saying that I met former President Kennedy when he was a senator. I was taken by, I was studying at Syracuse University, and Senator Patrick Moynihan took some of us to Washington for a week. And that was back in 1959, 58. And John Kennedy was a senator, Massachusetts. And so we got to speak with him and Vice President Nixon and Eric Sevareid, members of the Supreme Court. And when we met John Kennedy, there was something about his charisma. If you spoke to him, he looked directly at you. He didn't have eyes for anybody else in the room except the person asking the question. And he had gorgeous blue eyes. So I became enthralled with John F. Kennedy and went home and told my father, who was a local Republican, Dad, I'm going to vote pretty soon, and I'm going to vote for John Kennedy. But he's a Democrat. Yes, Dad, but he's a wonderful man. What's wonderful about him? Well, Dad, he's going to help the miners in West Virginia. He is going to get them out of poverty. All right, well, maybe they should go somewhere else. So anyway, I did join, he started the Peace Corps, as you know, and I came to Thailand as a Peace Corps volunteer. Quite a few of us here who are Peace Corps volunteers. So I've been in Thailand quite some time, and I am a dual national. So I'm American and I'm Thai, okay? American and Thai. There is one issue that has been a burning issue for me for many years. No one's talked about it today. Mr. Evans, you didn't talk about it, about the issues about Americans doing business in Thailand. The issue is the corruption in our country. Now, this issue comes and goes, and it's an issue we don't like to talk about. It hasn't come up in any of our discussions today. But I believe for Americans to do business in Thailand, I believe it's illegal if they involve in corruption. Am I not correct? It's against the law. It's against the American law. Now, how do you get around that if you're an American businessman? Unless we Thais do something about the corruption in our country. We talk about it and we talk about it and then we don't talk about it. To me, it's the elephant in the room. So I present to you and to our audience, what can we do to solve this problem? Now, I went to a meeting some years ago where they brought experts from Hong Kong who talked about how they had gotten rid of corruption in Hong Kong. And I thought, well, why don't you come and help us? So I think for Thai people, for us, for people in the government, bring in some experts. Let's solve this problem. Thank you.
Was just a comments or a question after that?
You want to know how we solve corruption? Yeah. So first of all, you are 100% correct that anyone doing business that even as an example, even is done on an internet platform that's hosted in the US, so that could be two Thais, if they're involved in corruption, you're in violation of the Foreign Corrupt Practice Act. So I'm going to make two comments. One, I think it's a very difficult issue to solve, and I think that one of the things, and Ambassador Boyce and Dr. Chambers may disagree with me, that the U.S. has actually done a pretty good job of institutionalizing corruption. And if you look at, how our political and business community operates, it's actually not that much different, unfortunately, than Thailand. So I don't think it's just a Thailand issue. I think the U.S. has the same issue. But from a business practice perspective, I can tell you, you can do business in Thailand without being involved in corruption. American companies do it every single day, and they make the conscious choice to not be involved in the Foreign Corrupt Practice, to be in a violation of the Foreign Corrupt Practice Act by just not doing business in areas where they would have to participate in the corruption. And there are lots of opportunities to not take part in it, but I that's not an argument that it isn't a big problem. It is a problem. And I mean, tomorrow I'm going to be at an event where there's a panelist going to be talking about by adhering to anti-corruption policies, you actually will increase the top line and bottom line of your business. So I'm very interested to hear that. I'm not speaking on it, but I'm very interested to hear that. So I think that people are looking at it. There's some solutions. It's not an easy one.
Okay, I think we have to wrap up now because wrap up. One more? No, I think we have to wrap up now because we'll have a few more minutes left before the next session start. Okay, so I would just say maybe sorry, microphone.
No. I just want to make some comments.
Okay, please, sorry.
Okay.
Please, go ahead.
We still have a little bit of time. Okay. I'm the director of the ISC, one of the organizers. I just want to make two very short comments because I think they're very important comments made by our panelists. First one was by Ambassador Boyce. And I think this is something that a lot of people don't realize, that the current state of our relationship and the normal state of our relationship. I think a lot of people, I think especially in Thailand, sometimes we look at these diplomatic relations as a sporting event. So you support one, and then that means you don't support the other. So it's like boxing, or it's like football match, which I think is something very strange. Anyway, and as a former diplomat, I keep telling people that in diplomacy there's no black and white. It's always gray. It's whether it's very gray, dark gray, or whether it's light gray. But it's always gray. So I think it's very worthwhile for Ambassador to point out that what we are doing now is actually normal. And I think people should realize that. The second thing is that there's a comment about tilting. A lot of people have talked, even in the morning, about we tilting towards China. And I think this is, I keep telling people also that it depends on where you stand. Because if you, especially the US, in the last 10 years or so, because of the coup or whatever, you move away. So from moving away your angle, it will look like we move closer to China, even though we may be standing in the same place. It's perspective. And I think this is the original meaning of perspective when you use it in architecture and things like that. So I think this is something also people need to realize, that there's no tilting. It depends on the space between the speaker and the target. Thank you.
Before I went to Indonesia in 2001, a very senior U.S. official, I'm not going to name him or her, said, "You got to get out there and stop the Chinese. They're eating our lunch. The emergence of China is a big deal. We got to, and I said, it's not the emergence, it's the re-emergence, okay? Number one. Number two, the pie's getting bigger. There's room for us to have a bigger piece too. But what you're discussing is we have to up our game. Because the Chinese no longer, they don't have bad tailors, and they don't speak poor English, and they don't, initial forays into diplomacy after the Cultural Revolution, those are history. They've got first-class diplomats. We have to be just as good as them. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so I think we run out of time now. So maybe just one last comment before we close this session. As we have heard all the comments from our distinguished speakers as well as from the floor, I think there are some lesson to be learned from our relationship, and how to take it into the future, as well as some some opportunities that just wait for us, that we can make it better relations. Just one last question before we finish this question, this roundtable. Last year, I think maybe a few years ago, John F. Kennedy Foundation of Thailand, we have also co-sponsored the event, Great and Good Friends, co-hosted by the American Embassy in Thailand. So to close this session, are we still great and good friends with America in the next, 10 years, 20 years, forever?
Not just America. Sure, it's possible.
Yeah. I mean, just one last round, then maybe to close off. Yeah. So.
I certainly think so. I saw that exhibit that Glenn Davies, the U.S. ambassador then, was able to kickstart. And it certainly reflects, this good and great friends, it certainly reflects the fact that Thailand and the United States, people-to-people relations are quite intact. And certainly China and other countries are also, expounding upon their relationship with Thailand, but the United States also makes that effort. And that's certainly what his campaign was all about. Thanks.
I would say very short, absolutely. While the current U.S. administration is re-engaging, and they're going to make a few mistakes, and they've done that. They've put a very, very capable and experienced diplomat in Ambassador Godik here. That's a show of commitment, and from a business perspective, I see nothing but upside in the relationship. And as we engage to the earlier question, in the soft power, in the cultural exchange, those relationships just get stronger.
Yes.
Nice and short and succinctly put.
Yes, it's possible.
Okay.
Yes, it's possible.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And on that note, thank you all the speakers for this session, and thank you all the audience. So stay tuned for the next session with younger speakers and younger new issues, new dimensions for Thai-US relation. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.